So the highlight of our evening is our keynote speaker, the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. The First Minister is a frequent visitor to Ireland. We consider her a friend to Dublin. Nicola Sturgeon is a woman that's known for speaking her mind. She's one of the most visionary and powerful leaders of our time. She's one of the most instantly recognisable leaders across all generations. We're really looking forward to hear what she has to say tonight. And I know Dublin people, we like people who are forthright, outspoken, and tell us it straight. So we're really looking forward to hear from the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. Welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mary Rose. Thank you to all of you for the wonderful welcome here this evening. I think the only other place on the planet with as many straight talkers as Dublin is my home city of Glasgow, so I feel very much at home here this evening. I decided about half an hour ago to pay a visit to the ladies before I spoke, and I've had so much Irish charm on the way to and from the ladies that it took me that long to get there and back. It is absolutely fantastic to be in one of my favourite cities in the whole world. It's always a pleasure to be here in Dublin. The good news for you this evening is that I am now, I think, the only thing standing between all of you and the gin bar over here. So I've decided to be charitable and reduce my speech this evening to a mere 1.5 hours. That sounded like a nervous laugh. You should know that I'm not entirely serious. I won't speak for any more than 45 minutes. To be serious for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, I thought it would be appropriate this evening to begin by adding to the many tributes that have been paid to former Taoiseach Liam Cosgrave. He was, I know, a giant of Irish politics, somebody whose life spanned the lifetime of the Irish state. He was Foreign Minister when Ireland joined the United Nations. He became Taoiseach in 1973 as Ireland was beginning, in his words, a new career of progress and development in the context of Europe. I'm sure that everybody across Ireland and indeed further afield today are thinking of his children and loved ones. Let me also add my congratulations to Jim Gavin, the Dublin coach, and of course to Dublin for winning what was here but isn't anymore, but the Ladies' Trophy. I think it's appropriate actually that the Ladies' Trophy is still here with us. But it is of course a fantastic achievement to win the magnificent Sam Maguire Cup for a third consecutive year. It's an outstanding and historic achievement. I hope you will forgive me though, because I've got a confession to make. My thoughts this evening are more with current events at Hampden Park in Glasgow than they are with recent ones at Croke Park. I've been very discreetly trying to keep up to date with the scoreline. For those of you who don't know, and I can't believe there is anybody in the room who doesn't know, Scotland is playing Slovakia in a World Cup qualifier this evening. We've got to win tonight, and then we've got to win again on Sunday night just to get into the playoffs. No doubt it will come down to some complicated mathematical equation about whether or not we qualify. But the last I heard, it was 0-0. And if anybody gets an update, feel free to shout it out. As long as it is a Scotland goal, please don't shout out if Slovakia scores. Those of you who know anything about Scotland's group position in these World Cup qualifiers will understand that as well as following Scotland's match tonight, I'm also closely following England's game against Slovenia. Everybody in Scotland is passionately supporting England this evening, which I can assure you is always the case. I understand Ireland wants England to do well too. You've got a match against Moldova tomorrow night, and England doing well, I'm told, would help Ireland's prospects as well. So here you have it, a truly historic occasion. Both Scotland and Ireland are backing England at football. I'm pretty sure that has never happened before, and I'm pretty sure it will never ever happen again. In some ways, it's quite appropriate that I'm starting my remarks, quite unusually for me, I have to say, with some references to football, because I know that the last Scottish person before me to deliver the keynote address at this dinner was Sir Alex Ferguson back in 2014. Now, unlike Sir Alec, I'm going to try to stay away from divisive and controversial subjects like Roy Keane and stick instead to safe, consensual ground like Brexit. Before I do any of that, though, let me say what an honour it is to address this annual dinner, the largest and most prestigious gathering in Ireland's business calendar. Now, I know that the Dublin Chamber of Commerce has been in existence since 1783, when tumultuous political times back then, such as the end of the War of American Independence, were thought to require a general union among trades and a constant unwearied attention to their commercial interests. For over 200 years, that unwearied attention has benefited Dublin's business community and this city more generally. And that, of course, is something that matters deeply to all of you. But actually, it matters to me and to Scotland as well. I have lived all of my adult life in the great city of Glasgow, and so I see every single day the extent to which Scotland is shaped by the bonds that we share with Dublin and with Ireland. Those ties of trade, of friendship, culture and kinship, I think, enrich both of our countries. I've just come here from a meeting with the Taoiseach, and one point of many, I'm glad to say, that we agreed on absolutely is that those ties between Ireland and Scotland are not just stronger than ever, they are also now more important than ever. And of course, that's partly because of the shared challenge that Ireland and Scotland now face in Brexit. But it's also more positively because of the shared opportunities that we have for deeper economic cooperation. So the main message I want to convey tonight is that there are major benefits for businesses in both of our countries if we can build even closer connections together. As you might expect, though, I want to start by commenting on Brexit. I have to say it's deeply depressing to have to start by commenting on Brexit, but it is such an important issue for both of our countries that start there I must. I'm sure all of you know that Scotland is not choosing to leave the European Union. 62% of people who voted in the referendum in Scotland voted to remain in the EU. And that's probably not surprising when you stop to think about it, especially perhaps from an Irish perspective, because as a small nation, Scotland has been pooling sovereignty in one form or another for many, many generations. And indeed, if Scotland, as I like to say, when Scotland becomes an independent country, that will not change. We will continue to pool sovereignty across these islands and across Europe as well. So in Scotland, we've become, over the years, over the generations, very comfortable with the idea of overlapping identities, whether those identities are Scottish, British, European, Celtic, Polish or Pakistani. And the sense that small countries can be equals in a partnership of many is an idea that really appeals to us. And so in Scotland, and this is contrary to a point that the Prime Minister made in Florence 2 weeks ago, many people in recent decades have felt absolutely at home in Europe. And the fact that the UK government is committed to leaving the EU means that Scotland, like Ireland and the north of Ireland, now faces a dilemma which is not of our choosing. We want to remain a full member of the EU, but we face right now being taken out against our will. And we deeply, deeply regret that. It's quite difficult to overstate the extent to which we regret that fact. However, we believe that if the UK is determined to leave the European Union, it should not put ideology ahead of practical common sense. It should choose to remain a member of the single market and a member of the customs union. And in my view, that is the obvious compromise solution. You know, when you think of the UK, it's a multinational state made up of 4 different nations. And in the EU referendum, 2 of those nations, Scotland and Northern Ireland, voted to remain and 2 voted to leave. So finding a compromise would surely be democratically justifiable. And it would also be economically desirable, because leaving the European single market will be deeply damaging for Scotland's businesses, for our universities, for trade, for jobs, for our very sense of who we are and our place in the world. And in addition to that, the difficulty of attempting to find solutions outside of the single market is becoming clearer by the day, week and month. I watched the Prime Minister's Florence speech 2 weeks ago. She managed to get through that one without coughing, and I'm hoping fervently that I managed to get through this one without coughing. But like many of you, I suspect I welcomed many aspects of the speech that the Prime Minister made in Florence. The acceptance of the need for a sensible transition period was overdue, and there was finally some recognition that the UK must agree a financial settlement with the EU. And the high-level aspirations that the Prime Minister expressed in relation to the island of Ireland were vitally important, and also, I'm sure, ones that all of us share. But regrettably, there is still very little detail about how any of these proposals might work in practice. And partly, of course, that's because of the inherent complexity involved in trying to achieve the UK government's aims. As it's discovering right now, it's very difficult to leave the single market while also trying to form a comprehensive and ambitious economic partnership with the rest of Europe. But in addition to that, the government at Westminster has taken a remarkably long time to face up to issues that could have been and should have been addressed much more quickly. Issues like the financial settlement and, even more importantly, the issue of the rights of EU citizens. And failure to address these issues and the rights of EU citizens is a moral as well as a practical issue. I feel very, very strongly that people who have chosen, whether they come from Ireland or Germany or any other part of the European Union, if they've chosen to make my country, Scotland, their home, then they are welcome there, and we thank them for their contribution. So that is a moral issue. But the failure, even in a practical sense, to resolve these issues inevitably delays the proper consideration of the detailed technical issues that require to be resolved. And the impact of these delays is important right across the UK, but it is particularly important, I think, here in Ireland. There is widespread agreement on key aims, and that's a good thing. Key aims such as preserving the gains of the Good Friday Agreement and ensuring that there's no physical border between the North and the South. But the UK government's vagueness, more than 15 months after the referendum, still makes it hard to understand how these aims are going to be achieved. And that needs to change, and it needs to change quickly. I mentioned at the outset of my remarks that I'd just come from talking to the Taoiseach, the relatively new Taoiseach, and I was reminded as I was preparing for the meeting that the first time Leo Varadkar was ever eligible to vote was in the 1998 referendum that ratified the Good Friday Agreement. Now, I was quite struck by that, partly, I have to say, because it's quite rare for me to meet national leaders who are younger than I am. So I was quite disheartened and quite depressed to realise that by the time the Taoiseach was casting that first vote, I had already stood as a candidate, unsuccessfully I might add, in 2 UK parliamentary elections. Talk about making me feel old. But more importantly than that, that point struck me because it is a vivid reminder of the extent to which the Good Friday Agreement has become part of the fabric of everyday life in Ireland. It has been in place for the entirety of many people's adult lives. And it's the vital importance of that that makes it, in my view, so utterly shameful that so little attention was paid and still is paid, whether in discussions in the UK media or the Westminster Parliament, to the possible implications of Brexit for Ireland and for Northern Ireland. In fact, to my mind, one of the strongest of many strong arguments for remaining in the customs union is that it will make the issues facing this island easier to resolve. And so I suppose my first message to you this evening is this one. On virtually every issue of substance relating to Brexit, the Irish government and the Irish business community as a whole has an ally and a friend in Scotland. Like you, we didn't want Brexit. We still don't want Brexit. Like you, we support the single market and the customs union. And like you, we know that Ireland's circumstances require particular and very careful attention, and we will continue to add our voice to those arguing for an open border. We believe that these positions are certainly in the best interests of Ireland, but also in the best interests of Scotland and everyone across these islands. There is one further issue relating to Brexit that I want to touch on this evening, since it links to the wider economic points that I'll come onto in a moment. The UK's vote to leave the EU had many causes, and those causes will be debated and analysed, no doubt, for years, decades, generations to come. Immigration, the fear of immigration, often the distortions around the immigration debate certainly played a big part. But it does seem very likely that one of the big reasons underlying the vote to leave the EU was economic inequality. Inequality that feeds a sense of disillusionment and disenfranchisement among many people. And that sense of disillusionment, I know, is not confined to the UK. As Brendan said earlier on, John Simpson was the keynote speaker at this dinner last year, and I was looking back at some of his remarks when he spoke here, and he said at that time, making a prediction about the US elections, and I'm quoting him here, "I personally don't think he's going to get elected. I really don't." He was, of course, talking about the American presidential election, and John Simpson at that time would have been expressing what then was a widely held opinion, maybe also a widely held hope amongst some people. But the political events of the last couple of years have taken many people in many different countries by surprise. And actually, when you take a step back from this and think about it, if too many people feel too left behind by the status quo, if they don't feel that they benefit from a global economy, then perhaps we shouldn't be surprised if that is reflected in how they vote. And that's why I think political developments around the world pose such a challenge today for those of us who do support trade, who welcome immigration, and who believe that the benefits of globalisation, if they are properly managed, should outweigh the costs. They challenge us to do more, much more, to build a fair and inclusive society. It's the best, in my view, that's the only way to sustain support amongst the wider public for a dynamic and open economy. So in Scotland, inclusive growth is already a key part of our economic strategy. One element of that is that we recognise that there is a strong economic imperative behind many of our key flagship social policies, such as expanding childcare or improving attainment in our schools. We also understand the importance of housing, and I know that's an issue of particular relevance here in Dublin. Indeed, housing was one of the issues I discussed earlier with the Taoiseach. Now here, Scotland has a relatively good record. We build new homes at a faster rate than anywhere else in the UK, but we know that we need to keep investing. We also need to do more to make sure that work pays and that people who work hard feel as if that work is fair. And we are doing that in many ways in Scotland, not least through promotion of a proper living wage. We have a living wage accreditation programme in Scotland, encouraging companies to do the right thing and then be accredited for it. And when I became First Minister almost 3 years ago, there were roughly 50 accredited living wage employers in Scotland. There are now more than 900. A higher proportion of employees in Scotland are paid the living wage than in any other part of the UK. So these are important steps, and Scotland certainly hasn't got everything right. But like Ireland, I do think we're at least facing up to the right issues. And that's important. It's important from a political, social and moral perspective. And it's also crucial to ensuring that our economic policies are both successful and sustainable. If people feel let down by the economic order, they will reject that order. So right now, all of us have a job to do to convince people that the system works for them. Of course, Scotland, like Ireland, is never going to win from a global race to the bottom. We need to compete instead on quality, innovation and high skills. Last month, I set out the Scottish Government's programme for the year ahead, looking at how we in Scotland intend to do that. And given the transitions that we are going through globally right now, that felt much more a programme for the next decades rather than a programme just for the next year. And there are some parallels here to the work that the Chambers are doing, encapsulated in that wonderful film we saw earlier, to imagine and visualise what Dublin might look like in 2050. In fact, I was struck by a comment made by last year's President, Derry Gray, at this dinner when he was talking about that work, and he acknowledged then that nobody can predict the future, and we should understand that more now, perhaps, than we have in recent times. But he then said, it's not about being right, it's about being ready for the future. And Scotland is working hard to make sure that we are ready for the decades ahead. You know, for example, last month we announced plans for all new cars in Scotland to be 1-0. That was for Scotland, yeah? Yeah, phew. Look, just to put this in context, guys, right? Scotland hasn't qualified for a major football championship since I was in my 20s. You know, this matters to us. Anyway, back to the important business of the evening. Only interrupt me again if we score a second goal. I was talking about what we're doing in Scotland to make sure we're ready to take advantage of the opportunities of the future. I was talking about the ambitious goal we've set, that by 2032, we're going to phase out the need for new petrol and diesel cars. We're going to try and kickstart that revolution in transport by setting a bold ambition ourselves. And that's important for environmental reasons, but it's hugely important for our economy as well. We already have really strong capabilities in lots of important technologies, smart grids, battery storage. And if we send a clear ambition to lead technological change, not trail in the wake of that, we'll better position ourselves to be the inventor and the producer of these new technologies, not just the consumer of them. And we're taking a range of other steps to promote innovation significantly expanding our investment in research and development, for example, an area where Scotland currently lags quite a long way behind Ireland. We're also establishing a national investment bank to provide the long-term patient capital that businesses need to compete in the high-end, innovative, high-risk sectors. And we're supporting a range of sectors, fintech, the screen sector, where we have big growth opportunities. And all of this, as we look to the future, we start from a position of strength. We've outperformed every part of the UK, apart from London, when it comes to attracting inward investment. We've got a highly skilled workforce, more world-class universities per head of population than any country in the world, bar Luxembourg, and we are determined to catch up with Luxembourg sometime in the future. We've got an international reputation in sectors like advanced manufacturing, financial services, oil and gas, life sciences, food and drink, and tourism. And we have big strengths in some of the key areas for the future: informatics, data analysis, sensor systems, and renewable energy. If you look at renewable energy, Scotland has quite extraordinary capabilities. We're home to the world's largest tidal power array, and in a couple of weeks' time, I will open the world's largest floating wind farm off the coast of the northeast of Scotland. So we've got lots to be proud of, but we've got to do more. This is a time to build on strengths, not rest on our laurels. And I firmly believe that Scotland, like Ireland, is well placed to meet those challenges. And because of that, and this links back to my views on Brexit, we want Scotland to be an outward-looking, internationalist, dynamic economy. We want to export goods around the world, and we want to attract talent from the rest of the world. And that is reflected in our approach to immigration. You know, we benefit so much from the fact that people, including 15,000 people from Ireland, have chosen to live and work in Scotland, and we want them to keep doing so. And there are similarities here with Ireland, but whereas Ireland, and particularly Dublin, are planning for a significant population increase, we face a big risk in Scotland because of Brexit that we could see a declining working age population again. That's why we're arguing for immigration powers to be devolved to Scotland so that we can have an immigration policy that meets our needs. And as well as encouraging people to come to Scotland, we're encouraging our businesses to look outwards. We're expanding our enterprise agencies' presence in different markets around the world with a particular emphasis on the rest of Europe. We've got a new innovation hub here in Dublin, and we're establishing similar ones in Berlin and Paris. And few places are more important to us than Ireland. You know, Ireland is already Scotland's 6th biggest export market. There are more than 100 Irish companies currently investing in Scotland. Many of you will be represented here tonight. I thank you for the work that you do in Scotland, and if there are any here who don't yet invest in Scotland and want to, see me afterwards and I'd be very happy to give you the details. But these connections bring real benefits to people in both Scotland and in Ireland. Yeah, I mentioned renewable energy a moment ago. When I last visited Dublin last year, I visited the headquarters of SSE Airtricity. And when I was there, I heard about their Galway wind farm project, helping Ireland to meet your renewable energy targets. And Irish firms are helping Scotland to meet our targets. Mainstream Renewable Power has just been given consent to build a major offshore wind farm off the east coast of Scotland. And when that's completed, it will provide enough energy to supply 300,000 homes. Now, there will be occasions, many occasions perhaps, when Scotland and Ireland are competitors, not just on the football or rugby fields, but when we seek inward investment. But, you know, I think the opportunities for mutual benefit are far more numerous. I think if we can build much stronger links, a Celtic business corridor, if you like, that would benefit all of us. And there is certainly the political will to do that. But of course, the key to closer economic links lies with all of you and with your businesses. That's why I'm delighted that the West Lothian and South Dublin Chambers of Commerce, who signed a Memorandum of Understanding last month, are both here in the room tonight, and we have a delegation here from the Scottish Chambers of Commerce as well, who are discussing closer links with the Dublin Chambers as well. PwC are organising an event in Dublin next week to bring companies and leaders from the Scottish and Irish financial sectors together. Several of Scotland's fund management and fintech firms will be there, as will the Scottish Finance Secretary. These companies will be thinking about the scope for future collaboration, for example, in the development of supply chains. There are many, many other sectors where Scotland has key strengths and where Ireland also has important interests, whether that's tourism, creative industries or digital technology. Irish investors play a massive part, for example, in our food and drink industry, which has seen such success in recent years. In all of these areas, a sense of enlightened mutual self-interest will guide us to work more closely together. And when you think about our geographical proximity, our historic and cultural ties, and also the many economic opportunities as well as challenges that we share, when you consider all of that, I believe that greater cooperation between Scotland and Ireland is not just desirable, it is essential in the years that lie ahead. You know, at the start of my remarks, I mentioned the fact that the Dublin Chambers were established in the same year that the American War of Independence ended. The connections between Ireland and the United States are, of course, an enduring part of your country's story, and they're relevant to the quote I want to leave you with this evening. One of the finest speeches, in my opinion, given in Ireland's post-war history was the one delivered by President Kennedy to the Dáil in 1963. He was speaking at a time when, as he put it, modern economics, weapons and communications have made us realise more than ever that we are one human family and this one planet is our home. In that context, he spoke approvingly of Ireland's role as a prospective member of an expanded European common market. And he expressed the view that Ireland's remarkable combination of hope, confidence and imagination is needed more than ever today. You know, these words, as you read them back now, seem to me to be just as relevant today as they were back in 1963. Brexit will undoubtedly cause Ireland difficulties in the years ahead, just as it will cause difficulties for Scotland. But in my view, our anxiety about these difficulties must be balanced with optimism. Optimism about the immense potential of our nations. Potential based on our international reputation, our natural resources, and above all, the talents, skills and abilities of our people. So my closing message to you tonight is a simple one. Let's work together. Let's do it with hope, with confidence and with imagination to maximise that potential. Let's devote unwearied attention to developing the links between our two countries. And let's work harder to address the challenges of the modern world and to seize the countless opportunities that we have for economic and social progress. By doing that, I know that we can bring benefits to Scotland, you can bring benefits to Ireland, and together we'll bring benefits to all the peoples of these islands. Thank you very much indeed for listening and having me with you this evening.